I asked y'all to give me some of your most unpopular opinions about Drag Race, and I also asked y'all to be kind to the performers underneath the drag. Some of y'all listened to instructions, and some of y'all were very hateful, and those responses will not be documented here. I will be going through and reacting to each one of these, reading them off and discussing them. Some of them really got my brain going, and other ones I'm like, yeah, I can see this and I agree with this. Make sure that you are kind in the comments to the people who left these. I don't want to have to keep muting. If you're muted, you can interact with the video, you can leave a comment, but no one will ever see it, ever. So you can argue with the wall if you want to and be unkind. So let's get into this gal. Our very first one that we've got is, I think theater queens like Max, Plasma, and Jan are eliminated too early because Ru feels threatened since she came up as an anti-establishment queen, therefore feels insecure about queens with an arts education. I understand the perspective on this, and on some level I've always felt like there is a level of maybe frustration certain drag queens don't appreciate about theater kids. And that goes beyond RuPaul. That goes into nightlife. They have an axe to grind against those people. Everyone is going to have like a specific archetype of person that they don't like. I certainly have people in this world that I don't like, and I meet people like them and I go, well, I don't like you. I don't vibe with your energy. I don't know what it is that RuPaul does not like about theater queens, but it is very clear and obvious that Ru does not feel them the way that Ru feels queens like Georges or Lydia or some of the maybe alternative queens who do drag just a little bit different. These ones who play a little more by like theater, Ru doesn't gravitate towards, and that goes all the way back to like Milan and Thorgy and Pandora. You know, these queens that are just a little bit too much, their energy is a little too big. I don't know. Ru just doesn't like those queens. I couldn't say what it is, but I do see what you're saying and I agree on some level. But I also think that's just human nature to not like certain people. It's unfortunate that the host and the production team cannot shed their bias and just judge fairly, because the Boulets managed to do it. I'm sure there are ghoulies that get on Dragula that the Boulets do not like, but they recognize their talent and they recognize what they're doing and they can let go of maybe not enjoying them as people and judge them fairly. The next one is, some parts of the fandom like to pretend they can accept it's a television show and look past the edit when their patience for villains is actually more related to how entertaining they are. And then goes on to say, we hand out apology tour years later to Jeremy and Raja, but Kitty will never get one because we don't like Global All-Stars. Regardless of what happened on the show, no one on the cast has spoken ill of her since. Helenia has even said they're on good terms. I do think that there is a level of truth to this. People will allow someone to be the villain of the season and will accept that it's TV if they're entertained by them, where some queens just will not ever get a pass of, oh, they were presenting TV. It was a television show, because they don't find them entertaining or they don't like the season they're on. It's why it took so long for girls on season 11 to start getting some clout, because people were not entertained by 11. It's the same problem that 13 had, or a season like 10. The next one is, I struggle rewatching the Golden Age seasons like 4, 5, and 6 because of some editing choices. I really enjoy season 4, 5, and 6. More season 4 and 5 than I do with 6, because I just don't like the challenges of 6, and I know that's unpopular. I think the problem with those like Golden Years seasons is that it's just so fast, and the storylines that they have to rely on are quick. We get Latrice talking about how she was jailed and then winning the challenge about jail. The Jeremy and Redacted storyline is very hard and present through the whole season. Same with like Relaska Talks, Trinity against everybody. You know, there's these really hard storylines that are dense, and they have to rely on them because they have less content time. If this was a current season, I imagine that we would get a lot more fluff through the episodes, and it wouldn't be so like, today's topic is Trinity is a brat and nobody likes her. Today's topic is Joselyn is bad at runways and Courtney is better. You know, those are the storylines that they go really hard in. But I understand not being able to stick with it because the editing is a little severe. UK3 was a good season. That's spicy. I go back and forth because I think UK3 had some positives, right? We got Ella, Charity, Victoria. We've got this storyline of Veronica getting to come back, but not quite having enough time off the show to really grow herself and to grow her budget. So she didn't really get to exceed her expectations. We have the incredible Vanity Milan, who is just demolishing lip syncs left and right. Very old school energy of these OG lip sync assassins. And then we've got this growth point of Crystal learning that her words have impact and that they hurt people, and growing into her maturity as the season goes. Very Violet season 7, right? There's some really great nuggets here. The problem is that we get Drag Lexa. Oh my god, what was that terrible choreography dance challenge? They had to do the exercise one that was just rancid. Oh god, that was so bad. The girl group BDE is cute, but I don't know if it was the best of the UK. I think the ball challenge they had to do, where they had to do everything very quickly, is such a fun challenge. Bra Wars is cute. There's nuggets of good stuff in there. I think UK3 has a lot of good stuff going for it, but it does kind of feel bad because alt queens like Charity are not given any space held. And then you've got this queen like Scarlett who's doing fine, but Rue is so obsessed with her, you can just tell the bias is there. And it just feels very overly produced on Rue's side, and that she's not hiding her biases. And queens that she didn't like Charity, was just very hard on. Hard on. This is another one about Joselyn. Sorry, don't be. This person left 2 big comments, and I only kept half of this one, and I'll summarize the rest of it. Jocelyn Fox's Georgia Holt interview was fine in cross 0 lines, and then they go on to describe how Georgia has this entire chapter in her book about how she went back and forth on deciding to abandon the fetus that became Cher. And this is spicy, but I fully 100% agree. I think that if you write a book and you choose to include information about your personal life, and then you go into an interview, anything you write in your book is on the table. And I think this situation where Joselyn is talking to her about this abortion, it was something that she read about in the book, which shows that she's present, she's paying attention, she actually was engaging with the source material. And I don't think that abortion is something that shouldn't be talked about. At the time that this was airing, abortion was very much on people's lips because there were already the seeds of doubt that Roe was going to eventually be overturned, and we were talking about women's autonomy and bodily autonomy. There is a lot of conversation about that just in general in society, and drag queens inherently are political and should be able to talk about politics and political issues safely. And this edit of her being described as insensitive and you shouldn't ever ask that in an interview, it's a very sanitized Mickey Mouse Club. We don't talk about Bruno. Drag queens only do nice things. But then we're gonna focus on how Courtney Act is telling Joselyn every week that she basically sucks, and how Bianca is kind of dogging on Trinity for how she does drag and her unprofessionalism. Like, I don't understand how we can have these storylines, these characters that are really just dogpiling 2 characters, and that's fine. But when a queen wants to talk about real world issues that affect real people and dive into that and be political as drag queens should, that's a bad thing. We want to stay away from that. You can't be Mickey Mouse sanitized on one hand and then lean in really heavy on something that is very not Mickey Mouse Club. Season 7 of Drag Race is actually one of the best seasons of Drag Race and does not deserve the hate it's gotten in the past. You have some of the best queens on the season, the best snatch game, cool challenges, and drama. I'm just saying. Hard agree. Season 7 has some of the most iconic queens and probably the most in the million followers circle. Violet, Trixie, Katya, Fame. Queens like Kennedy are so iconic. Jaden Dior Fierce being one of the best lip syncers of all time. Max being a longtime fan favorite who is hated by the program. Pearl, Ginger, 4th time coming back to All Stars, come on. And host of Drag Race Vegas Live for good reason, because she's excellent at what she does. Tempest, one of the most iconic first outs in my opinion, just because of who she is. I think about her 8 Miles Wide lip sync from the season 7 premiere, which was so good. If you don't know that song, look it up. Candy Ho, incredible drama that just happened naturally. This is a really fun season, and again, the snatch game is one of the best of all time. Pearl and Ginger and Katya, Kennedy, all delivering such excellence through that in being genuinely very funny. The only dud in that Snatch game, really, truly, honestly, was Miss Fame. Jaden was a little one note, and Max was a little one note, but it's not unwatchable if you kind of ignore Rue's silence and not really giggling at the jokes. Like, these are great impersonations that happen through the entire Snatch game. Season 7 is so hated on because these are runway girls who were really changing the landscape of what Drag Race was gonna look like. Because season 4 and 5, it was all about who's got the best wet seal garment. Season 7 came in like a wrecking ball, changed what the runways are supposed to look like, and just didn't really succeed in the acting challenges because there were too many of them. It's a great season though, with a great cast. It's kind of the problem that I think season 11 has. The cast is good and the challenges were not really tailored towards them. I don't understand the hate for season 13. It's an entertaining season, with the exception of the final acting challenge, and as one of the best and most charismatic winners of the entire franchise. The last part, I agree with. Simone is probably one of the most charismatic winners of everybody among the entire Drag Race sphere. I think Simone is it. She's got a solid POV, she's got a solid brand, she's got a solid image, and she knows how to market that very well on the show, on top of just being good at Drag Race and the challenges. She has camera presence, and a lot of the winners have semblance of camera presence, but Simone is just a star from start to finish. I think ultimately the problem with 13, it starts out on a sour note with this lip sync SmackDown situation where we're then divided into these Stanford prison experiment groups, where one group are the clear best ones and then the other ones are the other girls. And this othering that happens throughout the entire season between the A group and the B group is such a solid storyline, and it sets up for this kind of bad taste in everybody's mouths as we move forward. And it always feels like they're trying to reinforce that the B group are the worst ones of the entire bunch. And that's frustrating to watch, on top of the challenges just not feeling super rewarding or satisfying. We get a lot of great drama between Candy and Tamisha, and that resolves itself. But then there's this huge storyline that happens with Rosé and Tina that goes nowhere. They do nothing with it. The Rosé and Olivia stuff goes almost nowhere. And then they set up these queens like Denali from the very beginning as being kind of an endgame player, but then don't do anything with her. So I think the problem with 13 really just lies on whoever was on the ground at the time was not really thinking about what the final product was gonna be. They were just figuring it out like Lost season 3, trying to figure out what they were doing with the show. I think season 11 has the same problem because it sets up from the very beginning like Plastique is endgame, and then midway through the season they're like, I don't want to play with you anymore. That's a whole video on its own. But I think that's ultimately the problem with 13. Whoever was on the ground and setting up the early storylines for what the final product was going to look like had a very different idea of what that was going to look like versus what the story producers ended up doing in the final cut. Sasha Colby was going to win season 15 no matter what. Kind of felt bad for the other girls, as I probably think they sensed it too. Not saying she was so bad and they edited her really good or anything, but it was obvious most queens knew they weren't going to win, which I thought was a bit unfair. Happened to a few other times too. Raja, Aquaria, Simone. On All Stars, it's really obvious. Yeah, I think this is a pretty common idea that Sasha was probably going to win no matter what. You don't bring a legend like Sasha Colby in to embarrass them. That's very old school Drag Race mentality. Bring in a fan favorite, someone that they all wanted, and then kind of embarrass them. Take a legend, embarrass the hell out of them. And I think in current modern Drag Race, they're more interested in creating success stories. Someone is really good off the show, so let's celebrate them and show why they're a legend. And I think that was probably the case with Sasha. I think she was doing good through the whole season. Don't think she was bad at all. I think that does happen to other queens. You know, we see Trixie and Alaska and Jinx, Shay, these queens that a lot of people argued were really good on the show their first time and off the show are fan favorites, and then they get a very favorable push through their time in All Stars that help propel them to the end. It's a reality show gimmick, and I think people know within the first few episodes, you're going to the end. This is the one we're not gonna beat, so let's just have a good time. And I think we see some queens along the way sort of just let loose and just try to have a fun time with Drag Race rather than try to aim for winning because they already know they're not going to. The queens nowadays are mostly fashion queens because of social media. They don't need to perform like they used to. I don't know. I mean, partially I agree because on social media you can get away with maybe not being the best performer because it's about visuals, it's about the aesthetic. That's the landscape of Drag Race as we as fans have continued to demand. We see queens starting in season 7 come in with high visual aesthetics. We gravitate towards them. We follow them on social media. The show picks up, they like the visual queens, so they cast more visual queens. They cast girls who couldn't really dance out of a paper bag if they needed to. They don't have a ton of presentational skills. They don't have a ton of charisma because we as the consumers value this. We value the mug. So I think if we want to see more queens who perform and who can bring the house down, we need to start gravitating towards those queens that perform. Because there are a lot of girls out in the world who can perform the house down. But as consumers, we don't gravitate towards them. So if we want to see change, we have to make it happen on our level so the producers know who to cast next. So like, I think it's a casting problem, ultimately. I don't think it's necessarily that the queens of today can't. That's who they're picking, because that's who we like. I think the Kardashian the Musical is actually one of the best of the franchise. Each time I watch it, I'm living my best life. And thank you for your content, I love it. Thank you, first off. This is spicy. Okay, Kardashian the Musical is an interesting one. I think it's a little discordant, personally. I hold space for your opinion. It is quite funny in a, what is this kind of a way? It's so kind of like awkwardly uncomfortable funny because you've got the Farrah Valentina clapping thing where it's so off key and so out of rhythm. And then Cynthia and Nina are so bad that it's hilarious. Eureka basically just like doing nothing and looking like she wants to die rather than be in that role. And then the trio at the beginning of Paris and Lindsay, and I don't remember who the other girl was, it's also really weird. It's a spicy take. I hold space for it. I think one of the best is Glamazonian Airways, but I can see that Kardashian is entertaining in a very specific kind of way. Shut Up and Drive is overrated. It's good, but like once you take it outside of the context of the episode, it's a solid 8 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. And now they're spicy. That's spicy. I think Shut Up and Drive is solid. It's a good lip sync. I agree. It's maybe not the best of the franchise. I think if we're looking at best of the franchise, it's like this will be Sorry Not Sorry, Vanity and Crystal to Hallucinate, Nira specifically to Come Through. Amy was a mess. Or Nira and Aurora to Black Velvet, which was so hot. Cuando Tu Vas. There are some excellent lip syncs out there that are just so good because of the energy that happened through them. Even like Boss B in season 15, I think is stronger now than Shut Up and Drive was. I think what makes Shut Up and Drive so special is that Tatiana was not known as someone who was a dancer and isn't, but she kept up with Alyssa, who is known as a dancer. And that challenge was such a breakout for both of them, coming into comedy where they were both not good at that, proving that they were strong and then lip syncing to a level that we weren't expecting both of them to be able to do. I think it's solid. I definitely think that it is maybe not as sparkly as it used to be because there's so many more in the pool of Drag Race, but I think it's still good. It holds up. Specifically from All Stars 2, it holds up as probably the best one, maybe next to Tell It to My Heart, which is criminally underrated, by the way. Queens with a unique signature makeup style should go in expecting to be asked to change it for the show. Not saying it's right, just saying that's what happens. Absolutely. If you go in with quirky makeup, you should expect the judges are gonna ask you to do something different. Go in already ready with a beauty mug, go in with a standard Wamana mug, but at the same time, the show should also give the same expectations to the pretty girls. If you come in with standard Wamana mug and, you know, stamped blonde hair that you always do, they should be asked, do red. We want to see you branch out of your aesthetic. Give us avant-garde. It's a double standard that frustrates me. Lip sync quality has gotten worse over the seasons, especially the MTV era, not holding up to older seasons. Not sure whether it's song choice or casting decisions. I think this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, is that we as consumers gravitate towards the visual girls, not necessarily towards the performers. Look at who is most followed from season 7. It's Violet, Pearl, Trixie, visual girlies, not the Jadens, not the Candies. The performer girls are not always the ones that the audiences gravitate towards. So I think it honestly falls back on that, is that casting is not reaching for the girlies who are doing more than the donkey kick. They're not looking for the girls who can do more than just the exhausted waitress. They're not looking for the girlies like Georges who can literally just create a dance that works so well with the song. They're not looking for the Jasmine Kennedys of the performance world. They're looking for those queens that push aesthetics first. And again, I think that falls on us as the consumers. Drag Race is at its best when production loosens the reins of control and lets the competition happen naturally. For example, season 9 top 4 was probably supposed to be Shea, Trinity, Nina, and Valentina. But they pivoted with Nina after she started self-sabotaging, something they failed to do with Lexi, and they didn't try to pull strings to save Valentina after Maskgate. Season 12, they were totally attached to Sherry and Gigi, but because of the Sherry situation, they had to completely pivot the edit real time, and it resulted in the season feeling much more balanced and organic. I agree on this, specifically with 12. Because of what happened with Sherry, they had to completely change the direction of the season, including editing from episode 1. In my opinion, some of the best seasons across the globe are in España, because those feel so lightly produced. If there is production meddling happening, it's not seen very well. The seasons that I think I gravitate towards a lot are some of like the middle Canada seasons, like season 3 and season 4 feel very organic. They don't feel like the hands are on the wheel too much. The seasons that I feel are overproduced are like All Stars in general, and like the UK versus the world. Those feel so production hands on the wheel, and we can see it heavily, and it makes it frustrating to watch if you're in it for the competition side. Unfortunately, Drag Race is more interested in being a TV show than in competition, so they very rarely pull off of the reins, and I think that's what makes 12 so special, is that it had to be more competitive because their TV things that they were baking into the show had to be removed. They had to take out the edits that forced a storyline to happen, and so it just feels organic. In season 3, they took time off like a month, I think, and the rumors are that Rue got sick, or that the Shangela and Mimi fight was so bad that lawyers had to get involved, so they took a month off. So by the time they came back, a lot of the storylines that were already there kind of withered away. UK 2 is another great season where it feels organic because that break happened 6-7 months. That production wasn't able to kind of interfere with stuff. So when they came back, it felt like a brand new competition. These are the seasons that I think feel the best competitively. And I think what we as an audience want is more competition. I think we're over the TV parts of it. The fandom cares way too much about Queen's Race. Black excellence is said every season is racist. Ugh. I could not disagree harder with an opinion. I can only speak for myself. When we talk about excellence in relation to a Queen's Race, it is celebratory. It is meant to uplift someone. In real life, race is often something that is not celebrated. Your ethnicity, your background is something that is often suppressed. You'll find in a lot of corporate jobs that even hairstyles that are considered unprofessional are often ones that are specific to the Black community. Your ethnicity and race is something that holds you back from opportunities, quite literally and often. So when an artist celebrates their race and their culture and their background in a celebratory and beautiful way, we as the audience want to keep seeing that. It is to uplift the thing that they are zoning in on, the thing that makes their drag special and unique. And that celebration is antithetical to racism, which is about tearing down someone because you perceive that they are gaining more traction than the ethnicity you believe to be better, which is what racism really is. So I completely disagree with this because it's about uplifting, it's about celebrating. If a queen didn't want to be celebrated that way, they wouldn't refer to their drag as a certain type of way. Aurora Matrix is someone who specifically talks about how her ethnicity and her Chinese background is important to her drag. Shea Coulee talk about how her drag is a love letter to Black women. People like Alexis Mateo bake being Puerto Rican into their drag. They celebrate it, so we celebrate it with them. This is the very last one for today. This is a crazy one, but I'd like to see someone other than Rue host the show. Lately, it seems that she's not vibing with any of the queens. Maybe getting a break from the show would help bring the good vibes back. I don't know. I am very team Rue should not be hosting Drag Race anymore. I think Rue's references are dated in comparison to the queens of today. Rue helped shape the universe of drag with Supermodel of the World, with Drag Race, with bringing drag to people's front doors and introducing it to Bob and Betty Beercan, who maybe never got to experience drag in any capacity. And I think that's special, that's important, that's worth noting. We see these queens like Brooke and Nikki and Supreme, hell, even Fred in her good days where she was being a good TV host. Mama Pow, Pangina, when she was paired up with Art, being really excellent judges because they're sort of looking at modern references, they're understanding where drag is now, they're able to connect with these queens on a level of understanding where they come from and what they're doing and why they're doing it. RuPaul doesn't understand a lot of what's going on and even ask queens, why are you doing this? Why do you do that so much? Because she doesn't vibe with it, she doesn't like it. She's got her aesthetic that she gravitates towards, and I think that is valid for some of the early seasons, but as we've gotten into the double digits, the gap is widening so much more in the same way that your boss might ask you how to put something into a Word document or in an Excel document, and you as this young 20 to 30 something have so much proficiency in that, and someone who is closer in age range would be able to work with you better. I think that's really ultimately what it is. Rue knows how to navigate Hollywood. Rue knows how to navigate the entertainment sphere. But I think that there are plenty of queens now who could do that just as well with just as much finesse and also connect with young drag. I'm thinking about queens like Bob Monet, Jinx, who I think would be great hosts of the TV show, understand how TV works, and understand modern drag. I think that this is an opinion that is slowly growing, and a lot of people are vibing with that of, there's so many internationals, we're seeing so many good hosts. Is Rue the best? Just because she was the original, does that mean she was the best? Is she still the best? But also, there's a level of production that is also bad and makes Drag Race murky. It's not just Rue. Rue's not the sole problem here. There are a list of people that show up as executive producer at the end of each episode. And those people are just as responsible for some of the bad decision making that happens on Drag Race. Rue just happens to be the face of it all. Thank you all so much for reacting with your unpopular Drag Race opinions. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Make sure to hit the like if you haven't already, and I will see y'all on the flip.